Now it's time for a new series of With Great Pleasure, and it features one of Britain's best-loved broadcasters, Sir Terry Wogan, with his favourite words and music, presented by his special guests.
Thank you for the warmth of your welcome, and I'm so delighted to see you, and thank you for coming to this piece of self-indulgence. But I'm very delighted that Radio 4 has given me the chance to do this, and I'm particularly pleased that when I asked some very good friends of mine to act as readers and musician, they said yes. And so I'm very delighted to welcome, first of all, Francis Tomelty, Sir David Jason, one of my very, very favourite musicians, extremely talented, marvellous man who's come across from Ireland just to be here and sing for me, Finbar Furey. Words. Words are my great pleasure. Read, written, spoken, I owe it all to words. Now I've made my living for over 50 years on radio and television. And tonight, in the BBC Radio Theatre, I have an audience. Now an audience is a theatrical concept. And radio and television is more personal. I always felt I was talking to an individual. Although, to be brutally honest, it's more likely I was talking to myself. My great pleasure in the written word I owe to my godmother, my dear Auntie May, who was the manager of a bookshop in Dublin, who every week sent me all the comics, Beano, Dandy, Radio Fun, Champion, Wizard, Rover, and every couple of weeks a new book. And that's where it all began for me, with Just William, Billy Bunter, Dr. Dolittle, The Wind in the Willows. I moved on to Steinbeck and Hemingway and Huxley and war. And I tried to raise the bar at 17, but Dostoevsky brought me up short. The Jesuits did their best to beat some sense in what passed for a classical education into me. And everything seemed to be learned by rote, catechism, tables, phrases utiles, poetry. Poetry. I can still recite great lumps of it. How I love it. It's those words again. Unforgettable. There's a stave in Tennyson's Lady of Shalott. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver. You can picture it. Now, I didn't come across Henry Newbolt until I came to Britain. But his Vitae Lampada has an opening line that I'll carry to the grave. And one evening, some years ago, at a dinner with my first guest, I mentioned this, and he put down his glass and recited the poem. And he's agreed to do so again this evening. Good friend, brilliant actor and producer, Sir David Jason.
There's a breathless hush in the close tonight. 10 to make and the match to win. A bumping pitch and a blinding light. An hour to play and the last man in. And it's not for the sake of a ribboned coat or the selfish hope of a season's fame, but his captain's hand on his shoulder smote. Play up, and play the game. The sand of the desert is sodden red, red with the wreck of a square that broke. The Gatlings jammed and the colonel dead, and the regiment blind with the dust and smoke. The river of death has brimmed his banks, and England's far, and honour a name. But the voice of a schoolboy rallies the ranks. Play up, and play the game. This is the word that year by year, while in her place the school is set, every one of her sons must hear, and none that hears it dare forget. This they all, with a joyful mind, bear through life like a torch in flame, and falling fling to the host behind. Play up, and play the game.
Thank you, Sir David. There's a breathless hush in the close tonight. What an opening line. And by strange coincidence, a good friend of mine from our school days together in Belvedere, Dublin, Ken Daly, lives in Newbolt's old home in Somerset. Belvedere College has alumni that include Irish Prime Ministers, Archbishops, rebels, British Lions rugby captains, me, and James Joyce. And when I was there, the bold James was persona non grata with the Catholic Church. So many people were. So his name rarely came up in class. So naturally we all scrambled to read him. Portrait of the Artist and Dubliners were easy enough, but the forbidden Ulysses was hard going. And I've always felt that Jamesy was having a bit of a laugh with Finnegan's Wake. Now in school we learned, again by rote, the Gaelic poets, Cullum, Blind Raftery, and of course William Butler Yeats. Mystic, senator, playwright, co-founder of the Abbey Theatre, and above and beyond all, a poet. I know whichever one of the great man's works I pick, I'll be criticised by my Irish friends for ignoring their favourite, but here goes. Francis Tomelty will read When You Are Old by W.B. Yeats.
When you are old and grey and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim's soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid the stars.
Words and music, they go together. Certainly have in my life. From Gilbert and Sullivan in school to Am, Dram, Noel Coward, an extra in opera. I've been everything from a Venetian doge in Othello to a waiter in La Traviata to an Assyrian slave in Aida. And I still love opera to this day. In my days as a radio and TV presenter in Ireland, I made many friends on the musical scene there, but I suppose I've only got to know and admire my next guest since playing his music on my BBC radio shows. And of course, I remember him on the golf course. He's made a journey here as a friend, and I'm in his debt. And he's going to sing, first of all, a song that was a huge hit for him, not only in Ireland, but here in Britain. Finbar Furey, When You Were Sweet 16.
Thank you. Will you sing it with me? Sing with me. When first I saw the love light in your eye, I thought the world had not the joy for me. And even though we drifted far apart, I never dreamed by what I dream of thee. This time, I love you, come on, as I've never loved before. Since first I saw you on the village green, come to me in my dreams of love raw. Oh, I love you as I loved you when you were sweet, when you were sweet 16.
Finbar, that was beautiful. You sing everything in such an individual and beautiful way. and the understated singing of the audience. It was quite beautiful. So he's not only a master of the banjo and the voice, but the driver, the wedge, and the putter on the golf course. I've had my moments there too. For a long period, I was the holder of the record for the longest putt ever seen on the television. And then some upstart called Tiger somebody overtook me. Now, for some years, I was a member of a club that overlooked the church and, more importantly, the graveyard of Stoke Poges in Berkshire, the very graveyard about which perhaps my favourite poem in the language was written, Gray's Elegy. Sir David Jason is going to read a small part of Elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray.
The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Save that from yonder ivy-mantled tower the moping owl does to the moon complain, of such as, wandering near her secret bower, molest her ancient solitary reign. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. The breezy call of incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. For them no more the blazing hearth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. Oft did the harvest to their sickle yield, their furrow oft the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund they did drive their team afield, how bowed the woods beneath their sturdy stroke.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Now, I've told you of my admiration for the word mastery of Thurber and Perelman, but the real master, the writer that Evelyn Waugh called the greatest writer of English of his generation, is, of course, the timeless P.G. Wodehouse. Now, I'm never without a work of the great Plum to hand. I claim a tenuous connection. We both worked in a bank before going to our separate ways. He was a classicist, although here the minute similarity ends. I've read his Greek and Latin trans in Dulwich College, his beloved old school. I certainly couldn't have held a candle to them. But I do love his classical references that litter all his works. And I confess, a slight bias here, I'm the proud president of the P.G. Wodehouse Society. So we're going to have something read by Sir David from one of the funniest pieces, and when you're saying one of the funniest pieces by Wodehouse, you're really saying something. This is an extract from Right Ho, Jeeves, and it's the presenting of the prizes at Market Blandings School by a somewhat inebriated Gussie Fink Nuttall.
Boys, said Gussie, I mean ladies and gentlemen, our boys, I will not detain you long, but I propose on this occasion to feel compelled to say a few auspicious words. Ladies, boys and ladies, and gentlemen, we have all listened with interest to the remarks of our friend here who forgot to shave this morning. I don't know his name, but then he didn't know mine. Fitzwattle. I mean, absolutely absurd. Which squares things up a bit. And we're all sorry that the Reverend whatever he was called should be dying of adenoids. But after all, here today, gone tomorrow. And all the flesh is as grass and what not. But that wasn't what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was this. And I say it confidently and without fear of contradiction. Right. I say, in short, I'm happy to be here on this auspicious occasion, and I take much pleasure in kindly awarding the prizes consisting of the handsome books you see laid out on the table. As Shakespeare says, there are sermons in books, stones in running brooks. Or rather the other way around. And, well, there you have it in a nutshell. It went well. And I wasn't surprised. I couldn't quite follow some of it, but anybody could see that it was real ripe stuff. And I was amazed that even the course of treatment he had been taking could have rendered so normally tongue-tied a dumb brick as Gussie capable of it. It just shows what any member of Parliament will tell you, that if you want real oratory, the preliminary noggin is essential. Unless pie-eyed, you cannot hope to grip. Gentlemen, said Gussie, I mean ladies and gentlemen, and of course boys, what a beautiful world this is. A beautiful world full of happiness on every side. Now, let me tell you a little story. There's two Irishmen, right? One, Pat and Mike. And they were walking along Broadway, and one said to the other, "Begorra, the race is not always to the swift." And the other replied, "Faith of begorra, education is a drawing out, not a putting in." I must say, it seemed to me the rottenest story I'd ever heard. And I was surprised that Jeeves should have considered it worth shoving into a speech. However, when I taxed him with this later, he said that Gussie had altered the plot a good deal, and I dare say that accounts for it. At any rate, that was the Conti as Gussie told it, and when I say that it got a very fair laugh, you'll understand what a popular favourite he had become with the multitude. There might be a bearded bloke or so on the platform and a small section in the second row who were wishing the speaker would conclude his remarks and resume his seat, but the audience as a whole was for him solidly. There was applause, and a voice cried, "Hear, hear!" "Yes," said Gussie, "it is a beautiful world. The sky is blue. The birds are singing. There is optimism everywhere. And why not, boys and ladies and gentlemen? I'm happy. You're happy, we're happy, even the meanest Irishman that walks along Broadway." Though, as I say, there were two of them, Pat and Mike, one drawing out and the other putting in. I should like you boys taking the time from me to give 3 cheers for this beautiful world. All together now. Hip hip hooray! Thank you.
Wodehouse, master of the written word. David Jason, master of the delivery. I came late to the poems of Robert Frost, but I was immediately taken by the simplicity, a quality I value, brevity. His "The Road Less Taken" is part of most school syllabuses, but this is my favourite Frost poem, and Francis Tomelty is going to read it for us now. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost.
Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake on the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
Thank you, Francis. The fact that he repeated the last two lines, an extraordinarily brave thing to do. And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. How right he was, the force it gives to that little piece. Now, John Betjeman was never on the Jesuit English lit syllabus either. More's the pity, because I love his cadences, his poetic view of the everyday, his sardonic wit, masked always by his gentle smile. Going to call on Francis again to read In Westminster Abbey by John Betjeman.
Let me take this other glove off as the vox humana swells and the beauteous fields of Eden bask beneath the abbey's bells. Here, where England's statesmen lie, listen to a lady's cry. Gracious Lord, oh, bomb the Germans. Spare their women for thy sake, and if that is not too easy, we will pardon thy mistake. But, gracious Lord, whate'er shall be, don't let anyone bomb me. Keep our empire undismembered. Guide our forces by thy hand, gallant blacks from far Jamaica, Honduras, and Togoland. Protect them, Lord, in all their fights, and even more, protect the whites. Think of what our nation stands for. Books from boots and country lanes, free speech, free passes, class distinction, democracy, and proper drains. Lord, put beneath thy special care 189 Cadogan Square. Although, dear Lord, I am a sinner, I have done no major crime. Now I'll come to evening service whensoever I have the time. So, Lord, reserve for me a crown, and do not let my shares go down. I will labour for thy kingdom, help our lads to win the war, send white feathers to the cowards, join the women's army corps, then wash the steps around thy throne in the eternal safety zone. Now I feel a little better. What a treat to hear thy word where the bones of leading statesmen have so often been interred. And now, dear Lord, I cannot wait, because I have a luncheon date.
Lovely, thank you, Francis. The Irish poet Patrick Kavanagh, known to Finbar and myself, was an irascible old sod. But we loved him. There's a statue to him along Dublin's Grand Canal, where he frequently walked and frequently cursed. Yet this poem, put to music, is a touching ballad of a sundered heart, and I can't think of anyone better to sing it for you than Finbar Furey. Raglan Road.
On Raglan Road, on an autumn day, I saw her first and knew that her dark hair would weave a snare, that I might one day rule. I saw the danger, yet I passed along the enchanted way. I said, let grief be a falling leaf at the dawning of the day. On Grafton Street in November, we tripped lately along the ledge of a deep ravine where can be seen the worth of passions pledged, and the Queen of Hearts still making tarts, and I not making hay. I love too much, and such by such is happiness thrown away. On a quiet street where old ghosts meet, I see him walking now, away from me so hurriedly. My reason must allow that I have loved not as I should, a creature made of clay. When the angels woo, he loses his wings at the dawning of the day. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful song. Raglan Road, sung by Finbar Furey. Grafton Street and Raglan Road, me lost youth. Oh, it's been my great pleasure to share my memories with you. I hope you took some pleasure from my meanderings. I love you and leave you with this brief farewell from Betjeman. It's called The Last Laugh. I made hay while the sun shone, my work's old. Now, if the harvest is over and the world cold, give me the bonus of laughter as I lose hold. Well, it's not farewell, it's not even au revoir, it's hors d'oeuvre.
With Great Pleasure was presented by Sir Terry Wogan and produced by Maggie Eyre.